everybody. So we are very excited today for a very special episode of Obscure Animation. We are actually together recording. Usually we are recording via video conference. And so this is kind of a different style than we've done before.
I know. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
It's nice to be here in person.
Yes. So this is Stanford and Rachel together at last, and doing a podcast together. We started awesome together.
I know, it's great.
Yeah, this is really fun. And yeah, let us know if you like this, because it's different kind of recording. It's just different kind of experience, because we haven't done the kind of research maybe that we have done for some others. This is more of, I would say, a post-show recap.
Right, because we just watched this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
We just watched it. And then we're giving kind of our thoughts and a little bit of research that we have done. But we're talking today about the Puppetoon movie. And this is a package film, I guess you'd say.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
From 1987. And it was put together to profile the legacy of animator George Pal. And were you familiar with George Pal before seeing this?
I was not.
Yeah.
After seeing this, clearly I've seen his work. I just didn't realize that it was him, because not only did he do cartoons, but he also did some commercials.
Right.
For, the American market, for television in particular.
Yes.
And
probably his most famous is the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yes.
Is his most famous creation. I realized when we agreed to do this, because it came out in 1987, I didn't realize that his shorts were so old.
Yes.
Yeah.
He, because he was working in Europe in the 1920s and 1930s, and he moved to Hollywood in 1939.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That is like the 30s and 40s. Definitely has sort of a wartime feel to a lot of the shorts. There's sort of that feeling of, similar to some of the package films in the Disney shorts we talked about, Silly Symphonies. You could definitely feel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sort of an influence and a style of them in these shorts, and it was really interesting. He has a very you can see the European feel on his shorts.
Yeah, definitely a European aesthetic in many, if not most, of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the type of puppets that he used was so interesting, as we were commenting on. We were trying to figure out, I think, some of the materials that were being used. A lot of them almost look like wooden puppets. And I don't know what he was using for arms, but he also used a different kind of unusual technique, this replacement animation, in that he, rather than like most of it's done today, where they use most of them use like the same puppet and move the puppet for each, incrementally for each shot, where he'd actually replace the puppet for these different shots. And we weren't sure which ones necessarily were which for doing that. Some of them I think we kind of figured it out. Mm-hmm. Like that tuba one, we were wondering, it seemed pretty clear. Some of the other faces and whatnot. But,
yeah, and it kind of reminded me of animation today when they just replace, like Anomalisa I was thinking of, where they replace the faces of the characters instead of having a whole new character. And you can actually see in Anomalisa, you can see the lines around the face of the characters. It kind of reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely see his influence through, I think, in little ways throughout many. We were talking about that, somebody like Guillermo del Toro, that we can guess that he was probably a fan of this. I mean, I bet you that Tim Burton was probably. I bet you that Henry Selick is probably
absolutely
influenced by him. It's just it's an interesting thing because back then, the shorts were sometimes the way that the studios financed their other projects.
Mm-hmm.
They were more they made more money than feature films, which seems crazy.
Yeah,
now.
it does seem crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so it's an interesting thing, and so it was a whole different sort of, I don't know. There's just a whole different aesthetic. We also talked about how you could see some of the same aesthetic in some of the early Pixar shorts.
Yeah, in fact, I was reading this interesting post on the Turner Classic Movies website, because that's what we watched, was a recording of this. They played it on TCM, and so we watched this recording that I had made of it. They're stating that the early techniques are in many ways the basis of modern computer-generated effects, and which we were commenting on, that would really make really made sense.
Because the early Pixar shorts were just sort of circles and triangles, which is basically most of these characters are circles and triangles. And look at something like Red's Dream was the one I thought of the most.
Yes,
it was very
absolutely.
Similar. So.
Another interesting thing this article was saying too, Rachel, was that the influence on Walt Disney was particularly profound. They were, I think we were reading in one of these articles that they were comparing George Pal to his influence in European, early, like the 1930s European film market, to like he was Walt Disney, like the European Walt Disney during that time period. But Walt Disney supposedly would show these Puppetoons at the studio.
Interesting.
And then they were influential. Roy E. Disney confirmed that, as well as influence on Disneyland with the audio animatronics, because they're saying that It's a Small World is really a Puppetoon. And
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if Mary Blair was.
I do too, because there's definitely that same kind of feel. I think Mary Blair's color styling is different than what George Pal was using, but still kind of in the very simple but unique style of the puppets. I thought that was interesting.
It's very true. Yeah, so this package film was released in 1987, and you'd said that there was another one, I guess?
Yeah, well, they had made one in 1985. So George Pal died in 1980, and one of his friends did a compilation film in 1985 that sounded like it was more of a tribute for all of his work, because he went and did some live action directing and other things. But that one was called The Fantasy Film Worlds of George Pal.
Oh.
And then this one that we watched from 1987 was entirely devoted to the Puppetoons.
Yeah.
And hence the Puppetoon movie.
Right. Yeah. Which, like I said, is sort of similar to, even the intros are similar to the Looney Tunes and the Silly Symphonies, and there's things from that era, with the intro. And they did do all the intros and credits for each short that they had, well, at least for most of them. There were a couple where we were a little unsure.
Yeah, they were a little unsure if they didn't put up a title card or anything. They just kind of started. So,
but yeah, most of these were done in the 30s and 40s, and there was 9 shorts in this film, but then there was also an introduction with
so weird.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
The introduction is Gumby, which I guess was his
one of his
good designs.
Yeah.
His
things. And Pokey.
Yes.
The horse.
And and then there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex named Arnie.
Yeah. Now, do you know anything about Arnie, the T-Rex? I don't know if he's was a character in something else or what, because he first starts being rather ferocious. In fact, it looks like he's going to eat this little kind of Bambi style of a deer. And then he pulls his teeth out and then starts chatting away, And he's almost like he's Rex from Toy Story, a little neurotic, a little insecure.
That's not confident in acting ferocious.
Yeah.
And that it says here on Wikipedia that it says, let's see here, that Gumby cuts the scene and questions Arnie on his hesitation to act ferocious. Although Arnie knows it's all just acting, he feels unfit for the part because it's just him. He explains that he was once ferocious, but thanks to the influence of George Powell, he has reformed and is now a vegetarian without a bad bone in his body.
And then they go inside into some editing room.
Yeah. I think he wants to like show Gumby or something like that.
Yeah.
The work,
how it does influence. It's like it's a movieola and they're going to look at the dailies, So,
yeah, it kind of makes me think of the Bugs Bunny movie that we watched, that it was like,
yes,
they tried to do that history thing, but it was just kind of, what's going on?
Yeah, it's just kind of random. It almost,
I think
in a way, falls flat.
Yeah, because these people are so precious to them. They're such good friends.
Right.
That I think they expect us to be like, oh.
and I think I was just being snarky and just like, okay, can we like get rid of this, done with this intro?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. It was funny, and I was just kind of like, is he gonna eat Gumby? What's going on?
Right. Look what's happening here.
Clear. But yes. So then we get into the shorts, and we have I think the memorable ones was the Hula Boola. I think that's pretty memorable.
Or just plain unforgettable. Or scarred.
It's just basically a Hawaiian scene.
Yeah.
That was very popular in the 40s because you had so many troops. I mean, not only did you have Pearl Harbor, it obviously brought people together, and it was very all of a sudden Hawaii became a very important part of America, but also you had all those troops there, and so you had things like South Pacific and things like that, and it's pretty similar to like your Talking Happy Talk or so it's just some of those group scenes.
Yes.
In South Pacific, it was kind of similar to that, and you get a little stop motion.
Yes.
Stop motion.
And there's minimal talking in these, and there was some, but it's mostly it's like a silly symphony, as you were saying. There's just this music and all these different things, and a lot of visual gags that some work and some don't necessarily work, but it's fascinating to see these different character designs and how he moves them through the frame. And I'm also, you were patient with my commentary, but I just kept noticing too how cinematic he filmed all of these. But and even some of these earlier ones, like this hula one, I thought I thought they were very artistically shot and really, really interesting to look at.
Yeah, I think so too. They definitely have their unique style. The way that the faces a lot of times are either very circular or very, very flat and oval, I guess.
Yeah, they almost look like a capsule.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Medicine.
Yes.
And so, that's interesting. And he won he was nominated for Academy Awards, but he didn't actually win. He was nominated for Tulips Shall Grow, John Henry and Inky Poo, and Tubby and the Tuba. But he didn't actually win, but he received a special Academy Award for his whole body of work in 1944.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, I think well-deserved because it's so interesting and clearly so influential on a lot of people. The same TCM article, sorry to backtrack a little bit, but it's talking about his influence on Ray Harryhausen, whose first job as an 18-year-old was at the Puppetoon studio.
Yeah.
And then, Tim Burton and Henry Selick, as you mentioned, Steven Spielberg. Was influenced by it. I noticed Steven Spielberg's name was like a special thanks in the credits of this one. And just how
and they even have a scene with a sailor in one of them that really did look like Popeye.
It did.
Yeah, it really did.
It was like a three-dimensional Popeye. In fact, we were lamenting.
Is that what studio does Popeye? Do you remember? Is that Hanna-Barbera or is it?
Well, I think it was the Fleischer Studio, which,
I mean, I guess it's originally a comic.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But
that's what it looked like. One of those old, like a 3-dimensional version of an old Popeye cartoon.
I didn't realize Popeye was so old.
Yeah, Popeye's really old.
Yeah, going all the way back to 1929.
Yeah. Was it Max Fleischer? Is that who?
Yeah, Max Fleischer. Paramount.
It was Paramount. Okay.
Paramount owns.
And then I don't know how that worked with Sony trying to do it, or with Jindy.
Yeah.
Tartakovsky, who was going to do that Popeye feature.
Maybe it's old enough that there's.
We were kind of lamenting that. Yeah, that movie.
Yeah. And then we get South Sea Sweethearts, which just kind of merged into the.
Yeah,
same.
that kind of seemed like more of the same. Yeah, I didn't know where the one ended and where the other began.
Yeah, and then they you get over to a more fairy tale segment with Sleeping Beauty,
which also was super weird.
It really was.
Yeah,
really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was odd, and they the just a type of depiction, even in fairy tales, of women, you would never see, her being kind of not only a victim, but her being kind of like, I don't know, like sort of hypnotizing the man, kind of reforming him or whatever. Which I'm glad that we don't see that as much now. So we don't see it. But yeah, his eyes get kind of woo.
Yeah, was that Punchy? What do they call that one? Punchy and Judy or something?
Something like that.
So kind of a play off of Punch and Judy.
Yeah.
And that one also was really weird.
Yeah, not my favorite.
No, I didn't really care for that one either. And also, we're saying that's definitely a product of its time. They would not get made today.
Yeah. Yeah. And then The Tulips Shall Grow,
which I think was one of my favorites, if not the favorite.
Yeah.
John Henry's awfully good one. I'll get to that. But this one was really stunning and really serious. Like these other ones were all pretty light, as far as, silly symphony in tone. And this one really goes deep into World War II treatise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And you definitely had that in that time of animation. You think of Bambi, for instance, dealing with some of those, even Fantasia, you got the devil and grief and Ave Maria and all of that stuff.
Yeah, because this Tulips Shall Grow was 1942.
Yeah.
And, Pal had left Europe for Hollywood in 1939, so he had seen I'm sure a lot of the stuff firsthand or experienced it.
Yeah, and we forget that these shorts were not really a part of children's entertainment necessarily.
Right.
They would come on after a newsreel or just before any movie, and people would go to 1 to 2 movies, and then you'd have these shorts in between, and they were very money making for the studios. And sometimes people would just see a whole bunch of shorts, and so there wasn't that that stereotype then of animation is necessarily for children.
Mm-hmm.
I think because it was so new.
Yeah,
and you didn't have the kind of amusement parks built around it and other kind of stuff that sort of makes you feel a little younger.
Yeah,
and you have something like Sleeping Beauty. It's obviously more for children. But some of these other ones are not necessarily so. And the thing about Tulips Shall Grow is that it was very beautiful just in all of the tulips, the little wooden, tulips.
They had hundreds, if not thousands, of little wooden tulips that they had put on this set.
Mm-hmm.
And these beautiful windmills and it's very bucolic and really lovely.
Yeah.
Until the Nazis show up. And what were
the Nazis were like, just kind of, they're almost like aliens, alien robots.
Yeah, they looked like they were made out of, truly made out of nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
They didn't have faces.
Yeah. And then when it rained, it was like it was raining rust.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we're rusting.
Yeah. And the rust would kind of like turned into blood, and then they all just kind of disintegrate or something. But it's really dramatic and striking,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And again, I think for 1942, it would be something that would would resonate with.
Because they hadn't even won yet.
Oh yeah, I mean they were in the absolute throes of it.
Yeah,
you know.
So like that would be, because now we look back on it and it's like, I don't know, it's just a different perspective.
Yeah,
because we know you won, we beat the bad guy.
Well, but it has a very hopeful end to it, and then also just given the title, you know.
Yeah.
And in fact, the title card they put at the end, if I'm not mistaken, it said "Tulips always shall grow," and I think that, you know, this is George Pal saying we're not going to be overcome by this.
Because I know even in that time period, in Holland, they got so desperate that people were digging up the tulips and eating them.
Yeah.
Because there were some, I remember reading that about Audrey Hepburn, that one of the reasons why she was so skinny was because she had basically starved as a child, and they had gotten to the point where they were digging up tulips and eating them. And so that was totally a thing that happened. So there was probably a little bit of nostalgia even for those tulips when he was doing them, and because they'd already been trampled on and stuff like that by the soldiers. And so that one was a good one, and the music was pretty good in all of these. Definitely had some.
I think so too, and some of them, you know, on the title cards they would mention different performers. Some of these bands, they were almost like a big band, and I didn't necessarily recognize them. The only one I recognized was Peggy Lee, who was a performer in Jasper in a Jam, if I'm not mistaken. She does some vocals in that one. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the one.
The Jasper in the Jam is the music of Charlie Barnett and the vocals of Peggy Lee.
Yeah, I like that. And, you know, it's just like a little boy and his kind of little adventures.
Yeah, and like these instruments come to life or something, you know. It's almost like it's this dream or this, you know, kind of this very imaginative kind of piece. And it's moody. It's at night.
He also, I guess, was famous, George Powell, for doing a series of Dr. Seuss books adaptations, which would be really interesting to see, because I felt like I could see some of that influence too. He did the 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, and To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, and then Jasper in a Jam, I guess, was.
Oh, was that a Dr. Seuss?
His adaptations of the Dr. Seuss books.
Oh, interesting.
So it was a popular series about the adventures of a black boy.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we had the Together in the Weather, which was, I don't really remember.
That one was short and
but then the one of the big ones is John Henry and the Inky Poo, and this is basically the John Henry story, and it's pretty well done. I mean, the speed of the animation was very impressive.
Yes.
How they were able to get him to be drilling in the stop motion that fast was pretty impressive.
And I think you had mentioned too that this was also one that was, I mean, it was not offensive. You know, it was not. It was so respectful of the story and of the time period and of all the people.
Yeah, because this is 1946. And you have the Ebony magazine saying that says John Henry, an adaptation of the folktale of the steel-driven man, is the rarest of Hollywood products that has no stereotypes, but rather treats the Negro with dignity, imagination, poetry, and love. And that's a quote from there. And so, you know, and I think that's pretty accurate. You definitely feel sad for John Henry, and you know, you want to say stop, don't do this, don't do this, because a side of me was thinking, why you don't need to do it, like save yourself all the back-breaking work and have this machine be able to do it. But then, you know, all these people wouldn't have jobs, I guess.
Well, and they really emphasized too at the end that he became this symbol of hope, that
they could beat the machine,
that they should carry on with their lives even though this was really hard.
Yeah.
And I really liked how it ended, the sets were beautiful, the different sky backdrops, whatever he was using to show the sky. I thought it was beautiful, and the lighting is so good in it. It's really, it's terrific.
Yeah,
really moving.
Yeah, it was really good and had some good music.
Yes.
You could think, what year was Dumbo? What year did Dumbo come out? It's right around there, right?
1941, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you look at the difference between the Roustabouts song in Dumbo at the very beginning with them on the train, and I don't know, I just think something like this is so much better.
Yeah,
they're not just like faceless workers, like all these, even the other characters besides John Henry.
Yeah, they all had faces.
Yeah, they all had faces. They all had, you could feel sort of their story.
Yeah,
and you're right, Dumbo 1941.
This was 1946.
Yeah, so it's sort of the same time period. Yeah, I think this was better than that sequence, at least from Dumbo. And then what most people seem to think was his best short is the Tubby the Tuba. And I
didn't think that was necessarily the best, but it's fun, it's cute.
Yeah, that's what Los Angeles Times says.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah, well, and again, we were talking about how it's based on a story. I mean, it's not a story that I am familiar with. We should look up the book or books or whatever, that stars Tubby the Tuba. I don't ever remember
that feel of like Ferdinand or some of these kind of some of these silly symphony kind of stories.
Yeah.
The Ugly Duckling, that kind of story.
It's an orchestra. The instruments are just entities in and of themselves. They're not played by a human or anything. And
they're like, it's not animals, but it's like anthropomorphic.
Yeah, and Tubby has this melody, but the tuba never gets the melody, and then also everybody else is kind of mean to him. He's like he gets bullied by the violins and the
French horn, of course.
And the French horn. Yeah, absolutely, and the entire string section.
And I like that the French horn had a mustache.
That was funny. Yeah, because none of the strings had faces.
Right.
That they had personalities and and voices, but the horn, the French horn.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of, you also think of like something like Peter and the Wolf, where it's just telling the story through music, which is basically what this is.
Yeah. And
and Tubby, he nobody likes him. He's kind of the Rudolph of the
yes.
of the symphony. And
he didn't get to play any tuba games, or any orchestra games.
And and so he is very sad, and the conductor talks to him. What's wrong? And anyway, he ends up getting he's like, the conductor says, can tubas sing a solo? What? Or play a solo? And he ends up getting his chance to play the solo, and so it's kind of fun. And that was definitely more for kids. That one,
I think so too. Yeah, and it is cute, and I love the Hollywood Bowl style of venue that was created. And again, the orchestra was cute, it was harmless, it's fun.
Yeah, I think probably John Henry's my favorite.
Yeah.
Or the Tulip one.
Yeah, those were the ones that I thought were really the most interesting. And then some of those first ones, the tropical ones and things, again, were interesting to see the designs.
Really, they went on a little
They went on long. They really weren't compelling at all. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing the guy in the Los Angeles Times said. He says, 80 minutes of fast-paced activity proves rather wearying, and the movie becomes as cloying as a surfeit of bonbons. It was pretty harsh. And
brutal.
Yeah. He also says the heavy-handed prologue and epilogue suggests that the pal was the spiritual father of every recent stop-motion character from Gumby to the Pillsbury Doughboy and Joe Dante's Gremlins. He actually devised a special technique for his films that has rarely been used by anyone else. Willis O'Brien, who created the stop-motion animation for King Kong, has had a much wider influence on American animators. So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know why we can't just celebrate both.
Well, right.
Like,
I know, and I agree, because I think that this work that George Pal did was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see how it'd be influential, even though if it's not necessarily being used.
Yeah.
But still, he created it, and what a Herculean effort, I thought, to do so. Yeah. Even those weird ones, even with those can-can dancers, that had the weird dresses and the weird legs. Still, though, that's so much motion.
Yeah. I know, and the speed of the motion was really impressive.
It's really quite, I think, remarkable in a lot of ways. I do have to agree with this critic, as we've talked about it a little bit, but the intro was heavy-handed, and just too long.
Right,
it's just way too long. It's almost like it's kind of bored before it even starts. Not like I can't critique this person who put it together necessarily, but I commented to you during the watching of it. I had almost wished that it had almost been done in almost more of a documentary type style, where we could at least see in the film the year these were made. Mm-hmm. Maybe provide a little context if there was some available. I think that could have been really helpful and really interesting,
right,
to add to it. However, it's still interesting also just to see the work.
Right. Yeah, I think so. And it's just, if you're a fan of animation, it's fun to see all these different forebears and what they brought to the the medium, and so I'm glad I saw it. It's if you're a critic and you have to review, is this worth putting down money for? Then I can see why he's like, I don't know. Wait till it comes out,
or wait till they show it again on TCM. Another animation night on, because again, that's where I recorded it. It was on some kind of an animation night they were doing on Turner Classic Movies.
And that's probably the way to see it. Not that you can see it in the theater now anyway, but yeah, I think if you can watch it on TCM or some other way, I think it's worth checking out and seeing some fun shorts. I mean, I really enjoy shorts, and seeing how they influenced all kinds of animation. I think just because they maybe didn't have like as specific an influence as Willis O'Brien's maybe did, doesn't mean he didn't have some influence as far as the creators and people. So yeah, and that would have been interesting too to see, because even in that Bugs Bunny movie, they had like quotes from some of the different people about what they did. They had that whole section, because when it didn't work in the Bugs Bunny movie is when it got into the weird award thing, but the more historical part was actually
really good. Yeah.
And so if they'd done something kind of like that, I think that would have been interesting to have had maybe an interview with Joe Dante about his work on Gremlins, or I don't know. That could have been cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's interesting.
Also, I think check out George Pal's IMDb page, because he did a lot of interesting work. He directed some films. Mm-hmm. Like he directed, I know we've talked about this, that he directed a version of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine that starred Rod Taylor.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool sci-fi.
Yeah.
And it had some interesting effects and whatnot, but again, he did a lot of interesting things. So I think it's just worth, is just even from a kind of a film history perspective, is to see what George Pal did.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'd be curious to know kind of, I guess he was from, he got exile status from, he came over from Hungary, I guess is where he came over from. So, that's pretty interesting. And he must have spent some time in Holland.
Absolutely. That's what I'm thinking too, with how he did that short, or was definitely familiar with their plight.
Yeah, he did a bunch of sci-fi and fantasy. When Worlds Collide, The War of the Worlds, Tom Thumb, The Time Machine, The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm.
Oh yeah, have you? I've seen that one too on DCM.
I think I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah,
I think I've seen it.
I think I've seen Tom Thumb too.
It's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, he has that Oscar, and there's even a George Powell lecture on fantasy and film series in his memory at the Academy. So there you go. And he also did some work, I guess, on the stage musical for the Rocky Horror Show and the Rocky Horror Picture Show movie. So yeah, a lot of variety there.
Yes. But interesting career.
Yeah, so this was fun. I really enjoyed checking this out. And so if any of you guys listening have seen any of this work of George Powell, if you've seen Puppetoon, the movie, let us know what you thought, and give it a shot, give it a watch, and then let us know what you think. And if you have any suggestions for obscure animation, then just let us know, and we would love to hear your ideas. And next month, I think we are going to be doing the Wind Rises from Hayao Miyazaki. We're going to be talking Studio Ghibli. It's so obscure that I forgot to include it in my Studio Ghibli ranking that I did in November. But it's really not that obscure. I just am not very good at my job sometimes. But no, I am really excited to talk about it. It's a really nice love story for.
It's such a unique film.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and another really interesting look at World War II.
Yeah. Good point. Yep, it'll be really good. And so let us know what you think about that. And please subscribe to the channel, and please give your ratings and reviews on iTunes. It really helps us out. And Stanford, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Stanford Clark, and I also have a movie blog and podcast, which you can find at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And I'll have that. You can find that all in the description section. Check that out. You can find me all over social media at Rachel's Reviews and on on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
yay! Go Rach! We're just cheering you on.
So check that out. And thanks so much, guys. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.